Hey there, guys, gals, and non-binary pals. It's DMG, and welcome back to Blitz. And by special request, we have a tank review video on the 121B. This is the Tier 10 Chinese collectible medium tank. Notice how I say collectible. That means it is not a premium tank and is subject to nerfs. That being said, this tank has been buffed twice since its inception into the game, or release into the game. It has been buffed in terms of its fire rate, I believe, and I think in terms of its aim time, dispersion, and gun handling characteristics, which makes it a very solid tank. I know this tank is in the store currently for Christmas. I definitely recommend you pick it up if you have not already. Why? And why is this worth 20,000 gold roughly, right? This tank is the closest thing you will get now to a pre-nerf 140. The medium meta of 140s is long gone out of the game. It has only a very small chance of ever returning to how it was. I know meta shifts, between heavy, medium, tankster. It kind of goes in cycles, but I don't think it will ever return to a pre-nerf 140 meta ever again, where you can blast heat through things, high DPM, strong armor, good mobility, low profile, decent camouflage. Now I listed all those traits right there, but those are all things that the 121B has. This is the closest thing you will find to a pre-nerf Object 140. Why is that? Let's look at some of the similarities of this tank. So first, you'll notice that they both have 6 degrees of gun depression. Most people talk about the T62A being, inflexible? Yeah, so the T62A not being very flexible because of -5. They always say -6. -6 is worth losing all that dispersion and gun handling for. Well, let me tell you, this tank has its gun handling characteristics buffed, but it still retains 6 degrees of gun depression, which is super important. It allows you to get shots off like in that E5's track, poke in really small areas with a small profile, similar to an Object 140. It also has a strong turret, which is also similar to the pre-nerf Object 140. Personally, I don't think anything will rival that of the pre-nerf 62A turret, but this is still very strong. Keep in mind that after all the medium nerfs have happened, every piece of armor has gotten stronger by proxy. So I think when you go against other mediums that are not using calibrated shells, you definitely have an advantage with your armor profile. I think one of the biggest differences between 140 and 62A is that front plate, the upper front plate, and how strong it is. Well, the 62A isn't that strong, and the 140 is very strong. The 121B, while it doesn't have the same angle as the 140's 100mm upper plate, we do have a 120mm upper plate that is still sloped and will still create bounces. The armor is very troll on the front, which allows you to angle it up, have it look kind of gray, and then have people shoot at it and bounce off, or at least that's what I've noticed playing against them. The armor profile does resemble the pre-nerf 140 more than any other tank because the turret is still strong. The cupolas are extremely hard to hit on this tank while it's moving as compared to the 140's weaker turret, which is not as good in terms of the cheek armor and the roof area with the hatches. This tank, though, it does have that stronger turret. I know people are talking about the T22 medium and how good that is, but I would definitely take a 121B over a T22 medium. You can definitely manipulate the armor more because it carries that flat angled plate as compared to the IS-7 Pike, which I definitely think is something worthwhile to note. And if you're a good player, one who has lots of skills under their belt, being able to manipulate armor is probably more important than just having the frontal pike. Anyways, are there other similarities to the 140 is that it does have decent mobility. 140 is not like a Leopard, right? And neither is 62A. 121B kind of has around the same mobility. I use engine accelerator and engine boost on this tank. It gets me to where I need to go very, very quickly, and it allows me to bring that pre-nerf 140 kind of tank to the field that much quicker. You're going to see that here on Castilla as I engine boost away into the castle or middle castle area, and I play from there. Anyways, another important thing about this tank, like I said before, was that it has been buffed twice It may get more buffs, right? Because, you know, a lot of people have fallen out of favor with the Russian medium style. But I feel like this tank brings a different blend or a different flavor of it, right? And you have that 245, 300 APCR heat penetration loadout. It's better than the 140, that's for sure, because you know you have that 5 extra millimeters of penetration. If you really want to run a rammer, you can take this thing down to I think about 6.2, 6.3 reload. I personally run calibrated shells so I can get that glorious 330 heat pen that E100s, mouses cannot stop. You know, having that 330 kind of is the set standard, at least in my opinion, because having that allows you to go through the heaviest of armor if you aim well. In the way that this is different is that it has 350 alpha, and I know it doesn't have the nuts out DPM that the 140 has. You know, the 140 carries a 310 alpha gun with I think with a rammer it's a 4.8 second reload. This has a 6.8 second reload using calibrated shells and not a rammer. I want to make that very clear. But it's still very good. It still clocks over 3,000 DPM with calibrated shells, and this allows you to go haul down and gold down E100s, heavily armored targets, and it still gives you that 257 calibrated shells penetration on your APCR, allowing you to go through most targets reliably. Now, the 350 alpha part, back to that, I think it's super important that it has this, is that it gives it a different style. I know most people like to play that Russian medium, that super high rate of fire thing, but for me, I feel like as I've grown in the game, it's not about, you know, the rate of fire, because that means you expose more. Having 350 alpha in compared to 310 for me makes a noticeable difference, which is why I prefer things like the Leopard and the E50M compared to the 140 and the 62A. Granted, those are still great tanks, but having that 350 alpha allows me to X off targets, not poke as much, while still maintaining a high effective DPM with the calibrated shells, right? So in this case, if I'm against a 140 in a haul down position and we trade shots, I'm coming out better for it because I simply have more alpha. Additionally, the caliber of the gun does come into play there, and I think that does make a difference. If we think about how the Comet and the T43 have an impact on the meta, one cannot track the heavy tanks. Others, the T43 can. The Comet cannot. The T43 can, and that's because it's a difference of caliber in the gun. You know, with the T62A Object 140 gun, you're not always going to get those tracks of heavy tanks and damage them at the same time. But with the higher the caliber, the more likely you are to track them and do damage. So I definitely think caliber is a little bit of a factor in this. Not too much, but enough to the point where if you're interested in locking down tracks, getting those Confederate medals, that's going to be the better choice for you. And not to mention, like I said, the benefit of 350 alpha is you don't have to poke as much. You know, STB's going 1-for-1 with me. If I'm in the 140, I'm losing this trade, right? And he's definitely not on a one-shot, but I'm able to finish him off there. See, the 121B still has a competitive rate of fire with the calibrated shells. Now, I know most people think that, you know, this tank would never outclass the 140 or the 62A, but this is the closest thing you can get to a pre-nerf Object 140 based on the characteristics it has. It's not perfect by any means. I'm not saying that it's absolutely broken. It isn't, but it is very strong. I would probably argue nearing the E50M level strong, because that's what it is. It's like it's a heavy medium. It's a medium, not a heavium, but it definitely has the mobility to get around the field and still put out a lot of damage. So, you know, I know lots of 60-70%ers would probably be interested in this tank if it is available in the store, as it can do a lot of good work. You're going to see here how 105 caliber gun is going to be important there. Tracks the 183, allows me to get my final shots in. And you can see, as you've watched this video, the front plate has bounced enough shells to make it worthwhile for me. You know, it's not like a Leo or a 62A where it says it has 100 and then it doesn't really have any. Anyways, that's the 121B. I hope you pick it up. It's a great tank. If you like this content, please give it a like and subscribe for more. And if you didn't, please leave your constructive criticism in the comment section. As always, thank you for allowing me to share my passion with you today, and I hope to see you next time.